Hare Krishna. So first let's recite the invocation prayers. Om Ajnanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudhirayat. Now let's recite the verse together. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmacharanam satam Vidyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kingva Pararishvara Satyo Hridya Varudyate Trakritibi Shushrushubistatshanat. So we'll hear the translation by Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. So today is the third day on this verse. And now we spent some time memorizing it together. And we'll continue that more tomorrow. I thought today, instead of going exactly word for word, because we talked about that a bit already. We talked about Dharma and Dharma Projita Kaitava. We talked about Paramahansa Sanghitam and what is Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam. We haven't gone to the three bottom lines so much. Mostly we did the top line, yeah? Anyway, I was meditating a lot about this today, thinking about some things Prabhuji has said. Prabhuji said the best way to understand these slokas and Harikatha is to hear from the Vaishnavas, hear from the Acharyas, read their books, their commentaries, and then we have to meditate, to practice this contemplation, thinking, and by that we can gradually go from knowledge to realization, from Gyan to Vigyan. Gyan is knowledge, Vigyan is realized knowledge or applied knowledge. So that's why it's important for us to contemplate and to think about these things, how they relate, how we understand them properly, and if we achieve proper understanding, then we can feel like in our heart, this is something that is proper and true. If we feel that this is something which is false, like imagination, speculation, we should go and approach Guru Vaishnavas and pray for their help and mercy in helping us realize the actual truth. But the problem is also there that truth requires realization, not just memorization or speculation. The idea is that you can hear the truth, but until you think about it deeply and realize it, it doesn't make sense in your life and you don't know how to apply it properly. So Vigyan is applied knowledge or realized knowledge. And without going deeply into it, then you cannot actually attain realization. You have to pray and meditate. So the real knowledge comes in the heart in the form of realization through prayer and meditation. So when we chant Harinam, we should recite the slokas we're studying and pray to the slokas because they are also personalities. Right? Like we pray to Harinam, like we pray to our mantras, they're all personalities. So we pray to the slokas and we play, please reveal the truth to me, because I can read it or I can hear about it, but unless it becomes like deeply embedded in my heart, in a deep understanding, in a way that I can apply it in my life, then it's like not realized knowledge, and it's not applied knowledge or Vigyan. So the scriptures and the sastra, they are helping us by showing us how to properly live. That's teaching us what is the proper way to live and act in the world in truth. So to know how to live and properly act, that's why we need to study and contemplate. How should I apply this sloka in my life? That's why we need to think and meditate and study and pray. Because what is the danger of undeserved wisdom? So there's the danger if you acquire this knowledge without applying it in your life. Then it becomes like ungained or undeserved or unqualified knowledge. And knowledge is power. And without qualification, if you get power, you'll end up misusing it and causing harm. So therefore you need to follow the process and apply the teachings in your own life by following the proper behavior and character, and then by doing that you attain realization or wisdom, and you will know how to properly use it. Otherwise you'll end up misusing it. So that's one thing. Okay, so then I wanted to continue from some of the ideas we were talking about, continuing forward. So what does it mean to live properly? What is the proper kind of life? The proper, and when I was thinking about this, what I was thinking is the proper kind of life is in perfect harmony with truth and beauty. Or the beauty means like the what is giving happiness to others and oneself. So what is good? Something that is like beautiful, it is good. Okay, there's many ideas about that, but ultimately we know also this rasa or beauty is Srimati Radhika, and truth is Sri Krishna. So this is on the highest level. Satyam Param. Radha and Krishna together are the most truthful, the most beautiful. This is the absolute reality. So the proper way to live is in harmony or in service of truth and beauty. In service. And that's like the goal of our life, that we want to live in such a way that we are serving in harmony, truth and beauty. Which is like we want to serve Sri Krishna, we want to serve Srimati Radhika, we want to serve Guru and Vaishnavas. So what is the opposite of truth and beauty? That is illusion. And like what is ugly? The most simple idea. So illusion is what we're talking about in this verse, that he says like, Prabhupada says in the translation, okay, the highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. So we're trying to understand, okay, so what is not truth is illusion, and we're stuck there. And that is a horrible thing. Because, okay, beauty is what you want, what you desire. Okay? And ugliness you don't want. You don't desire it. So, and truth is what you want, and illusion is what you don't want. People want what is the truth. And they want to be beautiful. No one says, I want to be ugly. You want beauty, you want to be beautiful, and you want to be in truth. Not illusion and ugliness. It's one like paradox idea. So, this is one thing we have to understand also, is that when we say we want to be beautiful, or we want beauty, what is the real meaning? The real idea is that beauty is something that gives pleasure. So the problem now for us is that we want to enjoy it and not to embody it in such a way that God will receive pleasure from us. This is Purush Prakriti nature. That the Prakriti nature is that we are enjoyed, or we are using our energy in such a way that it gives pleasure to God. And this is the Purush nature of Krishna. So the problem is when we want to possess beauty and enjoy it ourselves. Possess beautiful things and enjoy them ourselves, instead of like becoming to our true state, which is beautiful, which is giving pleasure to God. So that's why the goal is to live in harmony with truth and beauty. The proper way to live in truth is to live in such a way that you're always giving pleasure to God. That is the most beautiful thing. It's not an external thing. So that's one idea. So I just want to go forward. Alright, so then I was thinking about this. Here's a proposition. Okay? When we hear something from Sastra, like a sloka, or when we hear something from Guru and Vaishnavas, then we should accept that as if it is true. Okay? Sastra is saying this verse. Guru is saying this statement. So I will accept that as if it is true. And then what we do, we need to learn how to live with it, how to live properly. So we apply some problem we have to that truth statement, and we see if any solution can come. Okay, so then we can do this. This whole kind of class is about this theory, and we can apply it in different equations. And I only have a few here because I was just thinking about this today, so we'll try it with a few different ones. So here's the idea, okay? You take a sloka or a statement of scripture and use it like a formula or an equation, apply a problem to it, accept the original idea as true. This is like the equation, x equals so and so, okay? And then apply the problem and you get out the solution. So for example, yesterday, I wanted to continue from yesterday. So yesterday, I was reading something of Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada and then meditating on it. So we read a few things yesterday, and I've been thinking about it a lot, subconsciously, consciously. So there's two main things we were reading about, two main statements. And I thought, let's take these two statements and apply it to this equation, like a mathematical equation. So the first one we heard is, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada said, the essence of it, the last line, the essence. You cannot be harmed by another unless you harm yourself. Remember that? This is Amritavani. It's also significant. Everything is significant. So it's in his Amritavani book. This means the speech, the Vani, the logos, the speech. That is Amrita, which is nectar, which gives you life. Amrita is death, and Amrita means non-death, which is like immortal life. So in his Amritavani, which is like the speech by which you can find out how to live eternally without suffering and dying, he says that you cannot be harmed by another unless you harm yourself. So that's the first proposition. Harm to pain, to give pain. Like if I cut your hand, you feel pain. That means I am harming you. But I cannot harm another, and another cannot be harmed by anyone else. That is what Prabhupada is saying. So how can we apply that in this equation? We have to ask. All right, what does this really mean? To what extent will we take it? Let's accept this as true. You cannot be harmed by another unless you harm yourself. So now we should see what are examples of people being harmed, where it looks like others are harming them. Okay, there's very obvious examples when someone is murdered, or when someone is raped, or in war when so many millions of people die. So we have to accept the proposition that they harmed themselves. And what I thought about when I was thinking about this idea, like, it's the most obvious thing. That's why I said realization. The most obvious thing is that it is true. But most of the time people don't think about it deeply enough to think, okay, if I really accept that it's true, what does it mean in my life? And if you really go down that pathway, it can be extremely, extremely difficult to follow. And very, very, very painful. How can we say that so many innocent people are said to be killed? Like in a terrorist bombing, so many innocent people are dying. But how can we say, that's why I'm applying it, how can we say that they are not being harmed by another, but they are harming themselves? How can we understand this? The example of Hitler, the example of Stalin, these mass murderers who are committing so much crime and so much violence. Millions of people are dying because of them. Then how can we say that they are not committing violence? So that's why I want to talk about also. We have to accept that this is true, and then we can see. This is critical thinking. In school they say you should learn how to critically think. So critical thinking means objectively analyze the situation, take different propositions into mind, and try to come to a conclusion that is appropriate. That's why Sastra, they say, any text you can have multiple interpretations of it. Actually, you can have almost infinite interpretations of it. But within the different interpretations, there is a hierarchy. Some are more valuable than others. And the ones that are more valuable are the ones that have more truth, or more truth in the sense that if you apply them in your life, they will lead to better results. Okay? So therefore, let's go into this idea. So therefore, if we follow this idea, it goes back to your question. All these things are circling around. So what your question is like, why do people suffer? Why is there evil? Why is lust so impossible? Why is it so difficult to overcome lust? Because lust and evil and violence are like a straight line. Like Krishna says in the Gita also, that Kam, Krodha and Lobh, like uninhibited lust and greed and anger, these are the three pathways to hell. That means they are what is giving rise. From lust comes anger, from anger comes violence, from violence comes evil. What do we think of as evil? When someone is killing millions of people, that's evil. That's violence. And why are they violent? Generally, you can say it's from krodha or anger. Why are they angry? Then we go back. Krishna says, we have to, again, to search for the answer. If we have a question, we search for the answer, and the answer will be Sastra, a truth. So in Sastra, we say, what is the cause of evil? That is the question. Why is there evil in this world? Why do people suffer? So then we have to look through Shastra, what is the answer to the question? And Krishna says, Kama esha krodha esha rajaguna samunbhavaha mahasano mahapapma vidyainam ihaverinam. The most evil thing in this world, or the most formidable enemy, verinam, enemy, is like uninhibited lust. And that lust to enjoy other things which are not yours, which you don't have the right for, and which don't want you to take them, when you try to take those things and they resist, then that develops into krodha, anger. From anger comes the tendency to violence. You try to violently take it by force. That leads to evil, suffering. Other people suffer. So then we have to come back to this idea that because of this lusty nature that's conquered over us like a fire that is burning us, then we end up committing harm towards others. That is the very root of karma. We cause pain to others. Therefore, the law of justice or karma, action and reaction or fruitive reaction, which is what we heard about in the other verse, is that we must receive that which we have given to others. This is the cycle of action and reaction. As you sow, so shall you reap. Okay, so let's think of that and then go forward. So, consciousness is eternal. This is Samvit Shakti. Samvit Shakti is pure consciousness. Existence is eternal. This is Sat Shakti or Sandhini Shakti, existence, and is eternal. And pleasure or happiness is eternal. This is Ladini, and this also manifests as Prakriti or as Pradhan, and everything is manifested from that. So I'm trying to go forward in one logical line. So then Krishna says in the Gita that there are 5, or Prabhupada says in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, says the Gita, and Gurudev also talks about this, that in the Gita there are 5 basic teachings, 5 different subjects. Okay? Ishvar, the controller; Jiva, the soul; Prakriti, nature; Kala, time; and Karma, fruit of reaction. Prabhupada and Gurudev say, of these 5, karma has a beginning and an end, the rest are eternal. Karma is an eternal principle, but in the case of an individual, then they have some chance of beginning and end. Time is like that thing which is like existence. You will never cease to exist. That means there's no beginning, no end. There was not a time when you did not. That's why Krishna says in the Gita, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you nor all these kings, nor in the future shall we ever cease to be. That means existence is like an eternal principle, Kal. Okay? But karma means that that's the only one that we can end. So the jiva is suffering because of karma. So people like to think that like karma, this is one other idea. Karma is like equality. Real equality. So generally people like to think of equality as personal rights. The right to freedom, liberty, happiness. But real equality means justice. What you do unto others will be done unto you. If you commit murder, then in the court system, even in this world, justice means that you will have to receive some type of punishment for that crime. So this is the idea of equality. Equality means justice, that everyone should be treated equally. So it applies most usefully in the case of criminal activity, the justice system. That's where equality is the best applied. That people they have the fair right, everyone has the right to act they should act according to the best principles. And if you're committing harm to others, then karma means that you will have to suffer in return. So karma is what has a beginning and an end. But kal, time, has no beginning or end, and prakriti, nature, has no beginning or end, and ishvar and jiv, no beginning or end. So that means that we can get out of the cycle of karma. So the question now comes, how to get out of the cycle of karma. So Krishna says, Nasato vidyate bhavana bhava vidyate sata uvayodapi drishtantas tvanyas tat vadaishapi. The wise man knows that which has a beginning has an end, that which has no beginning has no end. So karma has a beginning and end, because if it is true in reality, then it's true. So the truth is that we see that people escape karma, and we see sadhus, like they're not suffering from karma, they escape it, they're present with Krishna in the spiritual world. That's what we hear in Sastra. So they've escaped it, so it's real. So then, how to escape karma? Then that is the next question. And that answer comes by, we must follow proper dharma. And this verse is talking about dharma and adharma. Projita kaitava means adharma, false dharma. And real dharma is what we want to discover. So what is the most fundamental dharma? What is the most fundamental principle of how you should act? Dharma means how I should properly behave. What religious principles should I follow? What commandments are given to me that I should observe? So the most basic dharma is Dhoya dharma mul pap mul abhiman. Prabhuji says in class all the time, in Hindi especially, Dhoya dharma ka mul pap mul abhiman. Dhoya, or mercy, is the root of dharma. Compassion, not committing violence and not giving harm to others. That is the root of dharma. And pap mul abhiman, the root of sin, is pride and false ego. So we can also use this as an equation. That when someone is acting out of false ego, what is the result? When someone is acting out of compassion, what is the result? It doesn't matter how they externally appear. Inside, are they acting from pride or false ego, or are they acting from a compassionate nature? Okay? So we can think of that also. So now, if we follow proper dharma, it means we don't harm others. If you look at the 10 commandments that Jesus gives, they're all based on this idea of not doing unto others what you wouldn't want done to yourself. Don't commit adultery, because you wouldn't want it done to yourself. Thou shalt not kill. You wouldn't want to be killed by others. You can apply it to all these things. Don't lust after another person's property. Don't steal. This is also adultery. It means stealing what is not yours. All these different things can be applied with this. Proper dharma means don't give pain to others. That is hingsa. The root of our suffering in samsara is our nature. Because of the misuse of our free will, we have begun to commit violent acts towards others, because God gives us the right to. And originally, we have taken the choice of turning away from the proper way to live, the proper path, which is in God. Live with God. It's said in the Bible, the Old Testament, that Noah was great because he walked with God. And how did he walk with God? This is in the Old Testament. He said he would care for everyone. That's why when he brought everyone into the ark, all the animals, all the different people he brought, everyone was cared for like his own child. That's proper dharma. You care for others, you don't harm others. So therefore, that is one leg of dharma, mercy, dhoya. The dharma is said to have 4 legs. Okay, that is satya, truth, tapa, austerity, dhoya, and cleanliness, soch. Mercy, cleanliness, austerity, and truth. 4 legs of dharma. In Kali Yuga, mostly only some truth is remaining. Other ones remain here and there, but it's hard to find. But at least Sastra and some truth is there if you know where to find it. So then, what is another? If we want to be free of karma, we want to end the cycle of karma, which is the root of evil and suffering in this world, that our bad karma, which is equality, justice. Because of justice we suffer, because we commit harm to others. So how to be free from that? Again, we look in Sastra. When we come up with a question, we should try to find the answer in Sastra. So, do you know the answer? What we can think, okay? Many different answers are there. But the best answer is that one which has the best result. So the answer I've thought of, which is what we hear most regularly from Gurudev in this case, is that verse, Tatenu kampam sushamikshmano bunjana ivatma kritam vipakam kridvag vapurbir vidadan namaste jivete yo mukti pade sadhayabhak. This is a perfect answer because in the very end it says, by doing this you get free of karma. It's very simple. Tatenu kampam sushamikshmano. So we'll study and learn this verse soon, if we don't already know it. But I just want to give the essence of this because we don't have so much time left and I want to go over a few more ideas. So it means in essence that you must come to the point where you accept this principle of that you cannot be harmed by others unless you harm yourself. It goes back to the original principle we started with. That tatenu kampam, you accept that whatever suffering is coming to you is not caused by others, it's caused by yourself, your own fault. Doesn't mean you're cutting your arm or punching yourself. It means you are receiving it because of the principle of equality and justice. It is coming to you because of your karmic fruitive reaction. The way you get rid of it is you stop blaming others and stop playing tit for tat, an eye for an eye. That's what most people do. They hurt me, I will hurt them back, and I will also hurt their friends. Or this guy punched me, I'll punch him back. And it gets worse. This guy hit my car, I'll burn down his house. Or this guy insulted me, I'll kill his children. Or this guy insulted he killed our president, we'll destroy all the citizens of his nation. So this is what happens when we don't accept that what comes to us is deserved. What comes to us is our own fault. To get free of it, then Krishna gives this verse. You accept what is happening to me is my own fault. I will not react by causing suffering to others. I will accept the reactions of my karma without again reacting by causing harm to others. That's why Jesus Christ said, it's very famous. What did he say? In the old, different scriptures, people would like to follow this idea of if someone pokes out your eye, you poke out his eye. This was an old teaching. And even this teaching was there for a reason. Before Christ, they had this teaching, an eye for an eye. So why do they say an eye for an eye? Can you guess? The answer is that they have to give some limit. Because people are like, nowadays, if I punch out your eye, if I poke out your eye, you'll want to kill me and everyone I know. Some people are like that. So it means, okay, an eye for an eye. Keep it fair. This is justice. Justice is fairness and equality. But that won't get you out of karma. Justice or equality is what keeps you in karma and keeps law. Justice is like the law. And that law is like equality and karma and justice. And that is like the hand of God, which represents discipline, or which represents like the thunderbolt, or the sword, or the disc, the weapon of God. We see in God's hands, He has the disc, like the weapon of God, or the conch, which represents the sound, or Shabda Brahma. He has the Padma, the lotus, and that represents like compassion and mercy. So what we're going in the direction of is mercy now. So justice is fairness, equality, karma. Tit for tat. You poked out his eye, he pokes out your eye. That's justice. It means if you poke out my eye, I won't kill everyone you know. Because that's not karma, that's injustice. That's what causes karma in the first place. Violence. Giving pain to others where it is not deserved. So if we want to be free from the cycle of karma, we have to learn the principle of mercy. And mercy means what Christ taught. Christ taught, okay, you learn tit for tat, you learn justice, now I will teach you mercy. The Old Testament teaches justice, and the New Testament teaches mercy. Christ says, if someone slaps you on the one cheek, you should turn the other to the side so they can slap you on the other cheek. When you learn how to be merciful and realize tatenu kampam, that it is my own reaction to my own past misdeeds, then mukti pade sadhayabhak. Dayabhak, that person who has doya, mercy, which is the root of dharma. Doya, dharma kamul, pap mulabhiman. The root of dharma is mercy. The root of sin is arrogance. So when we learn mercy, that means gradually we'll become free, the cycle of karma. We'll learn how to properly serve and worship Krishna with love and affection, and we'll be free. So this is one angle. And just to finish up, we need to talk about one other angle, because this is not complete. So, and before we get there, I just want to mention a few other things. So, what is some evidence that Krishna gives in Shastra as like a commandment that this is true? This proposition that we cannot be harmed by others unless we harm ourselves. So what does Krishna give as a proposition for that? Krishna says, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. Have you heard this verse? Okay, so Krishna says in the Gita that Prakrite kriyamanani, that material nature is the doer when we are in this existence. Through the three modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, through the Trishargo Brisha that we heard in the last verse, the combination and the transformations of the modes of nature lead to the cycle of karma and action and reaction, and this is all done by Prakriti, nature. So nature is doing everything, but she is using the living entities as her agents. So the living entities are moving under the control of material nature. That's why Krishna also says in the Gita, Yantra Rudrani Mayaya, the jivas are on the machine of material nature moving about. So think of it as like a chessboard. And on the chessboard there are black and white pieces, and someone is moving the pieces. So then some pawns will go and kill another pawn, the knight will kill a bishop, the rook will take the queen or something, or they'll put the other team in checkmate. Then this is like the battlefield where violence is happening, like Krishna and Kurukshetra. But we have to understand this verse, apply the verse. The chess pieces are not killing each other. They are not the agents. They are the external cause. The internal cause, what is that thing which is moving them? That is Prakriti. She is moving. And God. This is Pradhan, or the will. The will of God is manifest through the forces of nature. God is will and consciousness and desire, and Shakti manifests his desire in the world. So they are like the movers, the prime movers. The jivas are like the pieces, and they are made to fight against each other because this is like justice, because they have committed some crime, some violence towards another, so they are fighting against one another. But they are not causing harm to one another in the sense that it is Prakriti. Ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. This is the third line and fourth line. That person who is under ahankar, which means ignorance or ego, thinks that I am the doer. So that's how Krishna gives the proof for Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur's statement that you cannot be harmed by another unless you harm yourself, because nature is harming. She is not harming. You have committed violence. You have committed bad activities. Therefore, you are getting the result, tit for tat. So you want to get free of it, learn mercy, stop reacting. But that is not enough. So now we need to go one step forward. We're talking about nature and karma. But what about Ishvar? And this is an interesting thing, okay? So what about the nature of Ishvar? And this enters another very, very difficult philosophical subject matter. Why do people become atheists and turn against God? What is the number one reason that people become atheists?
Because the world is unfair.
Exactly. So people say, why is everyone suffering? It seems like they're innocent. And if there was a God, he would be a horrible, cruel person. Therefore, I don't believe in God. So now we have to accept another proposition and enter it to like an equation, okay? So that is that there's two more I want to deal with, okay? So in a simple way, what you see in this world to be popular opinion is false. The most generally accepted idea in a given scenario by the most number of people, Prabhupada said it can have some falsity. Because that's the other thing we're reading about. He said that we should not accept the opinion of the vast majority of the populace. Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur says we accept Vox Dei and not Vox Populi. Vox Dei means the divine logos, the divine word, and not the Vox Populi, which means the mass of general opinion. Yes, we don't accept democracy, we accept autocracy of God. God is the supreme controller. So now we have to accept this idea. What is the idea? That the atheists are saying God is evil if God exists. And it's a good argument. Most people don't want to talk about that. And people criticize religion for this. They like to say God is love and love is God. God is love and love is God. But then why is there so much evil? I'm just going to check what time it is. If we should keep going. Okay, we've only been going like 30 minutes because we started late. So I think we can be finished in 10 minutes. We keep going? Okay, so it's a difficult question, okay? Atheists say God is evil if he exists. So we don't believe that God exists because how could God be evil? It would be too difficult to bear. If it were true that the supreme absolute controller who has all power and all knowledge and all wisdom is evil, then it's like too great a truth to bear. Better that he doesn't exist. So the atheists are thinking that because there's so much suffering and pain and evil in this world, God must not exist. Then they became Nirvisheshavadi, Shunyavadi, voidist and impersonalist. But if you see in a time when there is not much suffering, more people, if you're like in a paradise type of environment, and you were people that talk about God, then the atheists wouldn't say, oh, we don't believe in God because of evil, because they're not suffering so much and they don't see so much suffering. That's why the father of Buddha didn't want Buddha to be able to see any pain and suffering, and he kept him away from it. He wanted to keep him away from truth. But we know the truth of this world is that there is pain and suffering, inevitably. So why? So that goes back to fairness and karma. So when people say that people are suffering because it's unfair, now we apply the next idea. The next principle is that we don't accept the popular opinion. Prabhupada says you accept the Vedic literature, the Vox Dei, the opinion of God. The opinion of the ideal, not the opinion of the majority. The majority opinion says that person was innocent and they were killed. And therefore that was evil and God does not exist. But the proposition that we have heard is the opposite of that. And that's why it's so hard to accept this, because people don't want to accept that they have done wrong and that therefore they are suffering. They want to think that they're perfect little good creatures. But that's why Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he was in the Gulag in Russia for like 10 years, suffering so much in the labor camps. And afterwards he wrote this Gulag Archipelago. And in that he said that the line of good and evil runs through every human heart. So if you want to search outside and put the blame outside, first look within yourself. He realized that through very, very, very hard pain and suffering and torment, starving and being tortured and having to work as a slave in the labor camps in Russia, in Siberia. And he suffered for there for so long, and when he got out, then he wrote this book about his experiences, and he wrote this idea. So therefore, if God is good, and there is something which appears to be evil, then why does that evil exist? That's the next question. Why do we see that people suffer in this world? We cannot deny suffering. And we can say it's just karma and justice, but if we only say karma and justice, it's also too difficult to accept. It's too painful. Why is like little kids dying of cancers and starvation every day? Thousands of kids are dying. Thousands of people are being murdered. Thousands of people are being raped all the time.
Why is it difficult? If there are people who are being raped, this means somebody is raping them. So this means that like not God is raping them. So these people who are raping, what will happen to them next life? They will be the ones who are raping.
Yeah, but why did that person have to suffer?
Because they don't believe in reincarnation.
Yeah, so that's next.
Well, this is the thing, we'll have to talk about reincarnation next. For karma to be true, then reincarnation has to be true.
Yes, otherwise.
And that's the problem also in Christianity, that the old Gospels, they destroyed some that talked about reincarnation. Christ, in some Gospels, in the Gospel of Thomas, they talk about reincarnation. But Christ says, what you sow, so shall you reap. If you accept that as true, that what you sow, you shall reap, then a little kid who dies must be receiving karma, because they won't reap it if they didn't sow it. Okay, but still, why would God make people suffer? That's the deep question. What is the original cause of the suffering? And why is it happening? And that's what I want to end with, this idea, okay? So I'm going to give you a proposition, and you try to give me an answer for it. I have it in mind, but I'm just waiting to collect it, okay? So the idea is, love is what brings us together, and discipline is what keeps us together. That was what I was thinking of, like the theme. Love is what brings us together, love and affection. Love and affection from Guru Vaishnavas that brings people to the ashram, helps them stay. But discipline is what keeps them in the ashram. Without discipline, then they will go and they will not stay. And discipline means something we don't want, actually. It's not so easy, it's hard. That if something is hard to do and something is easy to do, what is hard to do is probably the better thing to do. That is discipline. Okay, so then discipline is like the punishment of God or the chastisement of Guru. And therefore God is like the father figure who punishes and gives chastisement. So the problem nowadays is that people don't want to accept what is called atonement with the Father. And in the tale of like the spiritual quest, we started with the spiritual quest in the beginning. One stage of that trail is atonement with the Father. It's not here. Alright? So, what does that mean? Like, if discipline is what keeps you together, what keeps you in harmony. Harmony is integration, togetherness, integrity. And that is done by discipline. By love you are brought together. But discipline keeps you together. That means something that you have to do, even if it's hard. Going to the gym, it's not so easy. It's something that's hard to do. Some people like doing it, but I'm just saying, look in your life, whatever you think is like a little, like learning slokas every day. You could learn 4 slokas every day if you had enough discipline, because you would get stronger and stronger at it. Like people who bench press or do push-ups. I did it before, first 5 and 10. After some while, I was doing 90 a day in one go. Or like you can do it in any different field. So it's actually not clear what is the limit of what you can achieve if you have the most amount of discipline possible. And discipline means being able to do what is difficult. So then there's a proposition, okay? Today is like the proposition class. So here's a proposition. What is the hardest thing to do? Because we're talking about discipline being hard, and God has the hand of justice, which is discipline, and the hand of mercy. This is like Sudarshan Chakra, discipline, punishment, chastisement, and the Padma, the lotus, which is mercy and compassion. Both are there in the hands of God. So, but why is discipline required? Because sometimes there is something that needs to be done which is hard to do. Okay, so what is the hardest thing to do? That's the question.
Depends. You can say many things.
Okay, so I'm going to give you one which is like the emotionally the most hard thing to do.
Emotionally, forgive. Forget.
That's difficult, but think even more hard.
Even more hard.
You can forgive someone when they hurt you. Okay, but what I think is even worse than that, what is more difficult than to forgive, okay, the hardest thing that is possible to do is like the hardest thing that can be done. And what is that? Okay, it's like a paradox. The hardest thing you can do is to give pain to those you love. To give the most amount of pain possible to those you love the most is the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do. Think of the hardest thing that's possible to do.
Yeah, but we don't get in such situation very often.
No. But imagine that it happened.
Yeah.
That's the next question. So this leads to the next question. If you had to do the hardest thing that's possible to do, which is to give the most pain to those you love the most, what would be the scenario that made that necessary?
Somebody would like somebody would make you do it. For example, they would shoot you if you don't do this.
Okay, that's a good example. That's what some people. That's one possible idea. But if you had more love for those, you would say, okay, I'll sacrifice myself. I don't want to sacrifice those I love.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, what I understand is that The only way you would do that thing which is giving the most pain possible to the ones you love the most is if they absolutely required it. If there was no other way you could save them. If someone was going to suffer in the most horrible way eternally, then causing them pain in such an acute amount that they would cease suffering, that they would stop suffering, would be the only acceptable reason to cause the most possible pain to the ones you love the most. So now apply it to God.
Okay, so He is punishing us so we can avoid the suffering which is even worse than death.
That's why they say when the devotees are having suffering from karma, God has minimized it to like the least amount necessary to help them, to fix them. That's why it said when we chant Harinam, when we do bhakti, then all our karma is burnt. All our karma is burnt by Harinam. But God will give you some suffering and some punishment in a small amount, in a little bit of pain, so that it can help you continue to grow. This is the need of discipline. That without love and discipline, you cannot mature properly. So the hardest thing for God to do is to give suffering to those He loves. And what is that? The thing you love the most is generally like your own, that thing that's like part of your own being. Like a mother's the child of the mother. Imagine how hard it would be as a mother to cut the hand off of her child. How much pain it would give the child. But if that hand had gangrene, and the gangrene was going to go in the whole body of the child and kill it, then she would cut off the hand and give the suffering to the child. So that's why God has to give punishment to the jivas when they require it. And we can think about that more, why they require it, and we can discuss that again more in depth later. But the idea is that God is not evil, and He is not, because bad things happen in this world doesn't mean that it's God's fault. But still, it's still coming from something that is like God's punishment, chastisement. And so if we accept that to be true, then we have to also accept that those agents which are causing suffering to us are our well-wishers. And this is even harder to accept. So not only are they well-wishers to us, but they are doing it as the agent of Prakriti, which is nature, Mother Nature, and they're doing it by the agent of Purush, which is the Father. So why we need atonement with the Father, we need to come to accept that God is love and love is God. But how can we relate in a loving way with God and with all His creatures? To do that, we have to give up our own bad nature. And to come to that position, we have to, Krishna says, like Prabhuji says many times, we have to suffer so that we learn how much it pains others, that suffering. When we suffer ourselves so much, then it's like, gosh, I shouldn't do that to other people. Imagine how much it suffers, how much painful it is.
I heard that pure devotees, they see hell as full of love.
Wow, where did you hear that?
I don't remember, but
this is like the ultimate extent of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to accept the idea that it's not like God is feeling good about it. Because that's what we have to accept, the proposition. The hardest thing to do is to give pain to those you love in the most possibly painful way. So it's like we see like the story of Kaikeyi, that she was like, all of India hates Kaikeyi, but she did it because Ram asked her to. You know the story of that she made Ram be banished.
Yeah.
She caused the kingdom to fall into complete disharmony. Dasarath died, her husband. Bharat, her own son, rejected her. She became the scapegoat. Everyone hates her. She had to send into exile Ram, who she loved more than anyone else. It's like the most painful thing. Or in the Bible, the father had to crucify the son as a sacrifice to the world. That God had to arrange that Christ was killed. He sacrificed His own son, the most difficult thing to do, giving pain, His most beloved one. So it's that we cannot even imagine how painful it must be then to do it. It's not that's why when people are thinking God is evil, imagine how painful it is for Him to do that. If you accept the idea that God is love and love is God and He's not evil, which is all, and that proposition is there in Sastra, that the idea is that God is love and love is God. Gurudev says it and all the acharyas of scripture say it. But he also has some discipline for us. In this world, in the spiritual world, there's another kind of thing. So that idea that we want to go in that way where we can become free of this type of suffering through our own proper behavior, through mercy towards others, and through properly behaving, and then I think the other idea we can skip. There's one other I think I thought we could talk about. The idea of, just in final conclusion, in the West, in America, the Constitution says we accept these truths we accept these certain principles as axiomatic truths. That God created all men equal, and He bestowed them with certain inalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is like the basis of democracy and the Constitution of America, and it's followed by many others, that same idea. It's generally like humanist and enlightenment. Okay? But this is the popular opinion of how people would like it to be. But from what we learn today, and if we apply that in reality, that if people want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then why do we see in the world that people are born in bondage, they are enslaved to one thing or another, and they are suffering, and ultimately they die? The opposite happens. Death, bondage, and suffering. Not life, liberty, and happiness. Death, bondage, and suffering. So why does it happen? They want life, liberty, and happiness, but they receive death, bondage, and suffering. That's the punishment, that's the karma. So therefore we accept the principle of that the popular opinion is wrong and the Vedic opinion is right. The Vox Dei. The Vox Dei says that all men are not created equal. Actually, God is not creating anyone. The Jiva is eternal. Sat, Chit, Ananda. Jiva is eternal, and each Jiva is unique and individual. So they are not equal. Equal means all the same. Equality is for karma and justice. Individually, we are individual. So we are not the same, we are not equal. And life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness means we want that, but because we are not offering it to others, then we receive the opposite. So in America, they're saying life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but what are they doing practically? Every year, billions of animals are being killed. Billions of animals are in slaughterhouses, in prison, as slaves, given the most possible amount of suffering and dying. So you want life, liberty, and happiness, but you won't give it to cows and chickens? So why should you get life, liberty, and happiness? Therefore you suffer. But God, when He makes you suffer, it's not because He hates you. It's the hardest thing for Him to do. But He does it, so hopefully you can escape that cycle. You can stop giving suffering to others, stop playing tit for tat, learn mercy, and then learn love and affection for God. And why does He have to give punishment to you also? You have to come to terms that I gave pain to God. And we'll end on that point, that if God has to give pain to us in the form of suffering, then what is the karmic, backtrack? If you backtrack and karmically, it means, how did you give pain to God? So the idea is that because God loves you so much, love is God, God is love, and He creates you and He has infinite love for you. But you decided, I would rather enjoy independently from God. I would rather be separate. I would rather try to be God myself, be independent, and I would rather cause harm to others. The jivas who became Baddha Jiva, they made the wrong choice. We said, why do they, when the choice is given in that split second, you want left or right, you want good or evil, you want Maya or you want Krishna, you want darkness or you want light. Those who chose darkness, they chose ugliness, they chose illusion, not truth and beauty and happiness. They chose this other side because they wanted to be independent God, and then they started causing violence and harm to others. So they did the worst things that God could imagine, which is giving pain and suffering. And that's the hardest thing for Him to do. And then He has to give pain to you to help you come back, because you gave pain to Him because He wants love and affection. And you turned away from Him, so you're denying God the right to have relationship with you. And that's the highest type of suffering, because Krishna said, and that's what the jiva suffers from most. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Janilam Maya Pase e Jad Jagate Govinda Virahe Duk Ebara Pyase. Like, finally now I have realized that I have left that source of happiness, which is Sri Govinda, and now I'm suffering so much in separation from him. And he is suffering so much also in separation from us. Sri Ramar said that the loving search for the lost servant is Krishna's search for bringing back the jiva, and he sends Guru for that. And Guru is the father who chastises, Guru Karnadharam, discipline. So we need to learn how to love God, even though he has now had to cause us so much suffering, because we have caused suffering to God in turning away from him. And that's why we need to learn to atone with the Father. That we now in the West, they hate God the Father because how is it that he makes us suffer? Therefore they've become Nirvasesha Shunyavad. That's why Prabhupada went Paschata Desatarine, Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desatarine, to re-establish the Father, God, and to help people atone with him. Accept the suffering, and then learn the principle of mercy, and even more, learn the principle of bhakti. So let's talk about bhakti tomorrow. And that's why we're going to talk about it in the rest of this verse, and even more so in the next verse. The next verse is all about love. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukamukad amritadrava samyitam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam mohura horasika bhuvi bhavuka. This next verse is all about ras and love and affection. So that's showing us the way. Learn to love God.
Which one is this?
Third verse of the Bhagavatam, very next verse. Next verse is Nigama Kalpataru. It means the Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge, which has been made even more sweet. It's like a mango without a seed or without any skin. It's only nectar. And it has been tasted by the lips of Sukha Goswami, who is the parrot of Srimati Radhika, and it has become even more sweet from that. And therefore it is relishable for those who are in this world, and even for those who are the bhavuk bhaktas, or the transcendental associates of Krishna. Even for them it is very sweet. So that is what we're going forward to. I think we'll spend one more day on this verse, and then we'll go to the third verse. Vanchakalpatarubhasya kripasinubhyo chapitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.